Do that and introduce Ken. He's the Chief Water Resources Sustainability Officer at Cal Water Service, aka Cal Water, which is a regulated water utility serving 2 million people in more than 100 California communities. Ken is responsible for ensuring the company's 24 service areas plan for long-term water supply sustainability, given SGMA, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, climate change, and other factors impacting water resources in California. Additionally, Ken is responsible for planning, creating, and managing the company's industry-leading conservation program, and there'll be more about that later today, which includes a robust portfolio of rebates, devices, outreach, and customer-specific water use efficiency tools. He serves as a board member of the California Water Efficiency Partnership, get my acronym straight, and has a background with Beloit College. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. With degrees in economics and management and political science. So Ken is talking about a new nexus. We hear about that energy water nexus all the time, but I think it's time for a new one, and this is the housing water nexus. So take it away.
Thanks, Dennis. I get the pleasure of following both Nisha and Max, so tough shoes to fill there, but we'll try to do it. So let's see here. Okay, you seeing my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, so as Dennis said, title of the talk here, Housing Water Nexus. I'd actually expanded a bit to say more broadly development water nexus, and I'm going to talk a bit about our development offset program that we're currently implementing. So before I do that, give a just very brief background. I think Dennis did a good job of doing this, but give a little bit of background about Cal Water. Give more of an overview at a higher level on water offsets in general, and I want to thank Marianne Dickinson for providing me with that background information that I'll be sharing with you. And then I'm going to talk more specifically about our development offset program and what we're doing there. So Cal Water, as Dennis said, 24 service areas in the state of California, up and down the state, as far north as Chico, down into Southern California, Bay Area, Central Valley, coastal, just a host of different makeups of our districts, urban and rural, affluent and disadvantaged, very heavily reliant on residential use, some more commercial use. So we see just about everything. When I talk about the development offset program, I'm talking primarily about the Bay Area, our Bayshore, which is our Mid-Peninsula and South San Francisco districts, and our Bear Gulch district. And then Cal Water is part of California Water Service Group. So we also serve in Hawaii, New Mexico, Texas, and Washington, a little over 2 million people. And in California, we are regulated by the California Public Utilities Commission. So let's talk broad overview, right? Water offsets. So, many areas in North America are already challenged to meet customer demands. That's being pushed even further with growing population, economic growth. This is placing even more pressure, specifically in arid and water short areas, which unfortunately are becoming more and more as we go forward. And as the drought and as those water shortages occur, residents that are currently there are asking questions about available water for new development when they're actually being restricted during those periods. And then the last piece here is some of these communities just simply cannot accommodate growth with the current water supplies that they have available. So what do water offsets do? Well, they actually can allow growth without increasing consumption in the system, either across the community or in a particular water supplier's area. This can be done through a combination of things. First, on-site water efficiencies. So just making the development itself more efficient from a water standpoint. That can be on-site reuse. That can be more efficient fixtures. It can be native landscaping. It can just be doing that upfront during the development piece of it, which has less of a water impact on the system. Then you have off-site water efficiency. So you can, instead of doing it on site, or it can be a combination of the two, you can look at where can we reduce water use off project site to offset some or all of the demand that's going to occur from the new development. So this then can reduce or completely eliminate the impact of that new development on water supply, and actually can help avoid building moratoriums in more resource constrained communities. So the Alliance for Water Efficiency completed some research. It's the water offset policies for water neutral community growth. They looked at anywhere from terminology, literature, and policy, and put this together. I would encourage people, if you're interested in this topic and getting kind of a broad overview of it and kind of digging into these specific case studies, that you take a look at this. They looked at a number of different communities. You can see them here kind of location wise. What you do see here is that the vast majority of these communities are located in California. So it is something that's been happening. We've taken a slightly different approach to this than others have, and I'll touch on that in just a minute. Last thing from a contextual standpoint is that the types of policies that they saw as they looked at this were, as I said, offset requirements for new development that's coming in, and then offset requirements for existing customers or existing connections that are going to be expanding their use. What does that look like? Development fees to fund efficiency programs, water banks, and then offsets required for areas that are being annexed into a particular area. So that really leads into what we're doing specifically. This is a practical example of how this can play out to address some of these issues. And so start with kind of the drivers, right? The state water board adopted the Bay Delta Plan amendment in December of 2018. Our three systems that I had mentioned before are Bear Gulch, Mid Peninsula, and South San Francisco districts in the San Francisco Bay Area. We get about 90% of our water supply from the regional water system that's managed by San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. And the Bay Delta Plan amendment will significantly impact the water supply available to that system, and then subsequently to us and our customers. So the information we got from SFPUC as we were preparing our most recent urban water management plan were projected forecasts of delivery shortfalls up to 46% in single critically dry years and up to 54% in the fourth and fifth years of an extended drought. These are really significant impacts to water availability, especially when you get 90% of your water from that provider. So generally speaking, we're working both on our own and with local and regional stakeholders to look at alternative water supply projects that can help to address this issue, right? Projects that can actually be implemented, looking at everything from groundwater development, brackish water desal, recycled water, water transfers, and then expanding our existing customer conservation program. So part of this strategy was how do we accelerate these projects, knowing that these impacts can occur sooner rather than later. And so to account for those shortfalls, what we did was we came up with this developer offset program, really to ensure that we can continue to provide a reliable water supply to our existing customers and allow for growth in our service areas in a very sustainable way. And so this offset program implements a new special facilities fee for those three districts of $15,400 per acre foot of the projected annual net demand increase from the project. So how we came up with this fee, it's based on a representative portfolio of alternative water supply projects and expanded conservation programs. So as I just said, we're looking at everything from, we included in this portfolio as we address the economics of it. We looked at groundwater, additional groundwater availability. We look at brackish desal. We looked at those what an expanded conservation program would look like and what that was on a per acre foot basis as a blended portfolio, and what it would take to actually then supply so the incremental cost of that cost to supply that development for a 20 to 30 year period, right? So what's happening is, as we're seeing these potential impacts, we're also getting developments coming in that require water supply assessments, right? And that's our responsibility in that, is to confirm that we have available water supply to meet the needs of our current customers and the new development under a range of hydrologic conditions, and for that 20-year period, right? Not just tomorrow, not just 5 years from now, but for an extended period of time. And as we were looking at these and we were looking at the impacts, you know, needing to sign off on this and make that that confirmation really was not something we could reasonably do, given those potential shortfalls that I talked about. And so this development offset program was developed to allow us then to offset the new incremental demand of projects by allowing us to then invest and move forward and accelerate water supply projects and reductions demand. And this is slightly different than what I had talked about before, kind of on the broader scale, which focuses primarily on demand offsets, right? That on-site piece and that off-site piece. We have that as a component of our program. We can utilize the funding that we get here to expand those conservation programs, but there's going to be a point in time where getting additional savings are becoming more challenging and more challenging. And so ours also includes a supply piece to it, which allows us to utilize this funding for new alternative water supply projects that we can then move forward more quickly. It only applies to developments that have a net demand increase of 50 acre feet per year or more. So it's not meant to be implemented for small projects or existing connections that are making minor changes to what they're doing, but really a threshold of that 50 acre feet or more per year of that incremental demand increase. And so as we look at this, I had talked about how do we grow sustainably in our communities while still ensuring that we have adequate water supply. And it's going to require diversifying those supplies. It's going to take a lot of the types of infrastructure that Nusha mentioned earlier, as we look at water reuse, adding additional water reuse, as we look at that brackish desal, as we look at those other sources of supply, and providing a funding stream to be able to do that is extremely important. So this doesn't live in a vacuum for us, right? It's really part of a more comprehensive strategy that then allows us to meet the demands of our existing and new customers, and allows us to continue to provide a reliable supply of water going forward. So Dennis, that's the background. Happy to answer questions on what this looks like.
Sure, Ken. Thank you for this. This lot to think about. I've been posting a couple things. The Alliance for Water Efficiency document is in chat, as is an article from actually an interview from PPIC, and which I was just kind of going through as well. And so has I mean, this is I assume a relatively new say policy put out. Has there been any actual kind of developments that this has come under?
So yeah, so we've been discussing the program with developers and with local cities for a while now, just as we were developing it. We did file it with the California Public Utilities Commission. They recently approved it. And so as we're now finalizing those water supply assessments, we're incorporating this into those assessments for developments that meet that threshold in these service areas. So we haven't had any funding come through from the fee yet, because we're just now implementing it into those water supply assessments. But we've already been doing the planning on the types of projects that we could implement once that funding becomes available. And so we have some really initial projects that can move fairly quickly, that we would be able to implement that will help offset some of this. But just getting started on this over the last few months.
Yes, it's very kind of a very interesting idea, and actually be interested to see if just if there is a design implications just with the specific development. Like, for instance, would they incorporate gray water, on a larger scale, or just to reduce their nut, essentially, and have, if not a net zero development, net zero water development, but a low impact water development.
Well, it has that benefit, right, Dennis? Yeah. It's on the flip side of that. I mean, to the extent that they're paying the fee, and we have those funds available for new supply projects. That's one side of it, but you're touching on, I think, a really important aspect of it, which is the hope is that it drives more efficiency on these projects up front, right? So to the extent that they're doing, like you said, gray water or native landscaping or on-site reuse or a number of different things up front in the design and development of the project itself, that's even better, because then we don't have to go and do the flip side of that to the same degree, the same cost that it would take to do those things. But that those dollars would be available, depending on how much they're able to reduce that on-site use.
Yeah, it's quite I'll say it's quite a market signal, and that's what kind of occurred, and as a matter of fact, I guess in a little while, Amelia Luna and Taylor Nakudian will be talking about on-site water projects, for instance. And I know actually yesterday, Cora Camamere from Pacific Institute was talking of on-site water projects from a developer's view, and this kind of changes the equation somewhat. But I think it could, be beneficial in that there is, in terms of a new development, using a lot of new water. So to quote Bertie Wooster, the mind reels but there's a lot of thoughts in that. And actually, part of speaking of water reuse, Cal Water was part of the announcement for the SF Peninsula Pure Water project, and we have Arvind Akella in the wings here, I guess, to talk more about that. Do you have any initial comments on that?
No, we're excited to be part of the project. I mean, we've been, this has been an ongoing research and development on this for years. We were happy to be part of it from the beginning of that process. And these are the types of regional projects that are just going to be essential as we go forward, right? You're able to achieve better economies of scale through these regional programs, and you may be able to achieve on some of these smaller projects that are more individual supplier based. Not that there's not a place for those projects, but these types of projects where multiple agencies can come together and kind of push in the same direction are going to be really, really important. And it's funny that you talk about all the other speakers and how all of these things tend to connect
Mm-hmm.
and align with each other. And I didn't talk about conservation. You're going to have some of that later on. That's a big piece of this. Climate change was mentioned previously, Max, and we've looked at it. You had the interview from PPIC there. We're looking closely at climate change. So all of these pieces fit together. And I think the one thing that we did about a year and a half ago is we actually combined our conservation department and our water resources team into one water resource sustainability department. And that has allowed us to really take more of a holistic look at how all of those pieces, both on the demand side and the supply side, fit together. But it goes to what you said. I mean, all of your speakers in one way or another have a connection to each other.
Yes, there are a lot of interconnections, and we're finding more and more. I mean, just even as we, ultimately care where our water comes from, that starts a whole list of interconnections. Also, I think just even in terms of curating speakers and topics, we definitely want to be part of the relate to the pillars that I had mentioned earlier, as far as kind of our water manifesto and our theory of change and all that stuff. I mean, we want that to be kind of consistent and be able to draw connecting lines to things. Well, yes. Well, thanks for letting us know about this. I mean, this is a lot to consider, and it's funny, even talking about, say, development within a net zero or a low impact water use. That is actually something we want to get into. Speaking of connections, with the Regenerative Communities project, because that is really looking at development through a sustainable lens, and across, well, I call them buckets, about a dozen buckets, and but water is one of the big buckets, since it's buckets are a traditional vehicle for water. So.
Well, I can tell you, if anyone has questions and want to dig into the details on how we develop this, they can certainly contact me. I'm happy to walk through it with people if they're looking at doing it, or just curious, kind of the background in that. I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting concept, and I'm kind of wading through a lot of stuff, and I hope to follow it and learn more. And just even the practical implications as far as development. So, thanks for telling us about this.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to let the lady sing.